Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. May peace be upon those who follow the guidance. Welcome to Askia Educational Network. I'm your host, Askia Abdulaziz Muhammad Toure al-Muslimun. My objective is not to be sarcastic towards any person, any group, or any entity, but my objective is to be in compliance to the rules of fairness and equity. If I say anything that is good, it is from Allah. And if I say anything that is offensive, it is from myself or it's from Shaitan. Today's topic is going to be on women. The people who study demographics, the world population, they say that it's more women on earth than men. They also say that there are more women that embrace the Islamic way of life, the Islamic religion, than men. Although the media, they portray women as being oppressed, but in actuality, many women find freedom and some form of liberation when they embrace Islam. This is a fact. There's many examples of this on YouTube. And in a later episode, I will give you the names of some people who were Christians and they embraced Islam. So, with Islam, the book that gives us guidance is called the Quran. And at some point, we should learn something about what that book says about women. And then the women that are Christians, the book that they have is called the Bible. And we should learn something about what that book says about women. So I want to give you an example first of what the Bible says about women. I want to give you an example in the New Testament, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 to 15. And this is in the NIV version. It says, I do not permit women to teach or have authority over men. She must remain silent. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. Now let me stop. In the Quran, this is the Christian Bible. And it says that Adam was formed first, then Eve. And that Adam was not deceived, it was the woman that was deceived. This is what is being said in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 through 15 in the NIV version. Because you have different versions in the Bible. So in the Quran, this is the book of the Muslims. It talks about the story of Adam and Eve, but it doesn't put the blame on Eve. It says that they both were deceived and they both equally, there's an equality, it starts off with an equality, that they both were deceived, they both was at blame equally, and then Allah forgave them. So there was no original sin passed down. But in the Bible, it says that for Adam was formed first and Eve, and Adam was not deceived, it was the woman who was deceived and became a sinner. So all the hell that goes on in the world today, all the atrocities that goes on in the world today, this book puts the blame on the woman because it said that she was the one that deceived, she was the one that was deceived, and she was the sinner. Whereas in the Quran, in this book, it doesn't do that. So there's an equality, there's a justice between Adam and Eve, and they both were at fault, and Allah forgave both of them, so there was no original sin passed down. So we are talking about women. This is the subject, the topic is about women, and I'm not able to talk. We can only do this in brevity. We can't go over what the Quran says about women in entirety because this is not what the time limit that gives me. But we just want to focus in on the first aspect of Adam and Eve. And in Islam, the woman is not responsible for the sin that goes on in this world. And they both were forgiven, and there was no original sin. So in the Bible, it says that a woman, she can be saved through childbearing. This is the first discrepancy in the story because all women cannot have children. The Bible is telling you in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 and 15, that she can be saved through childbearing, but we all know that all women cannot have children. So what about those women who cannot be children, who cannot have children? It doesn't say that Jesus saved you. It says that women can be saved. This is in the New Testament. 1 Timothy is in the New Testament. So it doesn't say that Jesus saved the women. It doesn't say that you believe in Jesus and you can be saved. It says that you can be saved through childbearing and through faith and through love and through holiness. It said that you can be saved through childbearing, through faith, through love, and through holiness, which means that if it's referring to holiness, it means that you cannot have a child out of wedlock. You cannot give birth to a child through fornication. You cannot do that because fornication is the opposite of holiness. So in America, there was a saying that keep them barefoot and keep them barefoot, keep them pregnant, keep them barefoot and keep them pregnant. This is part of where this term, this phrase came from, keep them barefoot and pregnant. You know, in America, women did not have the right to vote. Their own fathers, their own husbands did not give women the right to vote. Women were the property of their husbands. The Christian women, they were the property of their husbands. And that's the reason why they took the last name of their husband, because it denotes that they are the property of their husband. It's not like that in Islam. Islam, the woman, she retains her last name, she retains her family name, she retains her dignity, because she's not the property of her husband. She's the one that inherits property. In fact, the oldest university in Rabat, Morocco, woman named Fatima Al-Firi. She was a Muslim woman, and she inherited some money. You couldn't get that in Christianity because you did not receive an inheritance, but she inherited some money, and she started a masjid, a place of worship, and that masjid became a university, and this was in the year 859. This is before any universities that you had in Europe, because the Islamic civilization is what brought Europe out of the Dark Ages, and this is one example. And I want to do episodes on how Islam brought Christian Europe out of the Dark Ages. But this is one example that Fatima Al-Firi, the oldest university, is in Africa. And it was formed in the year 859. But she received the inheritance because she was not the property of her husband, and she took that money and it started the world's first university. Now, if you go ahead and do research on that, because you have people that acquire more knowledge now, you have these people that's trying to rewrite history, they're going to throw what they want to throw in there. They kind of throw you off to kind of keep you from looking at Islam in a positive light. So you might read something that does not indicate that. But if you do further research, you will find out that the oldest university, they gave out degrees, a teacher's certificate. It's called Izara. I might be mispronouncing that. It comes from the university in Africa in the year 859. So Christianity, the woman, she did not receive an inheritance. And then it goes on to say that in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 through 15, that women, they are not permitted to teach or have authority over men. So you see how they change everything to try to appease the women, to keep the women in the church. Then at the same time, they demonize Islam to turn you away from it. One of the greatest women teachers in human history is Aisha. There's no woman on earth, there's no woman in the history of the world where Aisha was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him, and she taught the men about the sayings and the actions and the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad. And these sayings and actions and the traditions of the Prophet Muhammad has been passed down from generation to generation. And there's no woman on earth that has ever taught men more than what Aisha taught the men that has been passed down. She's the greatest woman teaching in human history. But in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 11 through 15, in the NIV version, Paul says, I do not permit women to teach or have authority over men. She must remain silent. For Adam was formed first, then Eve. And Adam was not deceived. It was the woman who was deceived and became the sinner. So what your sisters, whether you white sisters, in America they use these terms. We don't like to use these terms in Islam, but this is the culture that we live in. Your white sisters, people of African descent, European descent, Asian descent. When they had slavery, they brought you into this. They had the colonization. They go to Africa. They go to Asia. They do these things to get you into this book. And then they demonize this book. This book treats women with equality. There's a certain type of fairness there. There's a certain type of equity there, and at some point in time I might be able to get into that a little bit more. So everything has been watered down to keep you from looking at Islam, to the point now to where they got you, go back to your roots, especially with the African American women. Go back to your roots. Your roots is Islam from West Africa. When the slaves came over, many of the women and men and children was Islamic faith, and they had a tradition. Their way of life was to dress modestly. They dressed like Jesus' mother. May Allah be pleased with her. Whenever you see statues and pictures of Jesus' mother, she's covered. She's not showing her body. But now you live in a society where women on videos, they doing different things on some of these videos that your forefathers never did. They didn't even do it back in the 60s. They didn't do it back in the 50s like that. Now everything is wide open. So try to come back to your roots. You have women teachers, but the Bible says that women are not allowed to teach men. So what happens is that the preachers, they tell you this and tell you that, they twist it, they turn it, and water it down, and then they keep you away from this book, which does not have none of that nonsense in it, because this is the last revelation to mankind. It treats women fairly, equally. More women embrace this religion than any other gender. Men. More women embrace Islam than men. Come back to your roots. This book indicates that all the hell that goes in the world, that's going on in the world, is because you was the first, you was the one that was deceived, and you became the sinner. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close it. With that being said, if I said anything that was good, it's from Allah. And if I said anything that was offensive, it's from myself or it's from Shaitan. And hopefully go ahead and hit the subscribe button. It gives me a thumb up. I'm trying to give you a perspective that has been marginalized in the media and in the education system, in the history books. They don't want you to hear our perspective, and I'm trying to give you our perspective. So hit the subscribe button. And next time, inshallah, if God willing, we see each other again. Assalamu alaikum.